Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Told you before we went out, you were the greatest group of guys as a football team that I've ever been around, and I love you. And I want to say it again, you're the greatest group of guys I've ever been around as a team, and I love you.
In 1964, the University of Georgia took a chance on a young new head coach for their football team.
Little did they know he'd turn out to be the most successful coach in Bulldog history, leading them to 6 SEC championships and a national championship in 1980.
Walker, touchdown!
The name Vince Dooley is a household name in Georgia, and for good reason. Not only did he take UGA to the next level in football, but he then took the reins of an entire athletic department and made it one of the most successful in the country.
An incredibly humble and giving man, Coach Dooley and his wife Barbara still live in Athens in the same home they first purchased in 1964. An avid master gardener, Coach Dooley has created a dream garden at their home and has even written a book on gardening.
This is a man with many stories, and we'll hear a lot of them tonight. Welcome to Dinner with a Legend.
A very special conversation with Coach Vince Dooley at Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead. Here's your host, 11 Alive, Sam Crenshaw, on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shula's 347 Grill in the Buckhead Marriott. Time for conversations with Coach Vince Dooley, a first in the series of conversations with sports icons, sports legends, and who better to start off with than Coach Dooley. This reminder that this opening hour of conversations with Coach Vince Dooley is brought to you by Kia. Visit atlantakia.com to discover Kia's full line of high-quality, stylish, and dependable vehicles. Got a nice crowd here assembling here at Shula's 347 Grill. Let's have a round of applause from you, everyone that's here. You happy to be here this evening? Coach Dooley, welcome. Always a pleasure for me to spend some time with you. Of course, tonight we're going to talk about some things that happened years back, where you are presently. Some things to go on forward. You're looking forward because to me you truly are a Renaissance man that walks among us, touching a lot more than just football. But we'll talk about the fact that you won the national championship in '80, the 6 SEC championships, your outstanding career as the athletic director at University of Georgia, the things that happened post the national championship year. But I'm going to dive right in with something that some people may remember and some people may not have heard. The fact that a lot of the things that happened after 1980 for you at Georgia could not have happened. It is because after that 1980 season, you got a phone call from some people who wanted to offer you an opportunity to come back and work at a place you're very familiar with.
Okay.
Within the Southeastern Conference.
Do you want me to elaborate on that?
Your alma mater. And in this day and age and time when, people move back and forth. We won't call the name of a certain guy down in Tuscaloosa who likes to do that. But in this day and time when we see that kind of commonplace, you chose to remain at Georgia. But let's start right there and just talk about that, because one of the things that I think the man who hired you talked about, your integrity. And that's one of the things that attracted him to you to come to Georgia.
Well, actually, I was the coach at Georgia for 25 years, and I did get a lot of phone calls whenever we were successful after a given year. But there was only 2 that I really ever considered in the 25 years, and the first one was Oklahoma, because Bud Wilkinson, who was one of my idols and heroes that I kind of emulated, he called me and said, you need to take a trip to Oklahoma. So because of my great love and respect for him, I did, and I was tempted, but there was a real outcry for me to stay at Georgia, and I'd just gotten here after 2 years and decided to stay. And then the only other time was after 1980 that you mentioned, and that was Auburn, my alma mater. And I had some emotional pulls because the governor was my roommate, a fellow named Fob James, and he had called me. So I took a look, but in the final analysis, I'd really been at Georgia too long, 17 years. By then, my roots were much deeper at Georgia than they were at Auburn. And all of my kids grew up. All of our children went to Georgia. And in fact, Derek, who was the youngest of the group, when we were getting ready, Barbara and I were driving to the airport. I was going to fly to be interviewed, and Derek was in the back seat crying.
Wow.
And he was only 8 or 10 years old, and he said, "I hate Auburn." But
that's your school.
At that age, that's all they know, And so that really struck a chord with me. I mean, all of my kids were Georgia fans. And so in the final analysis, I thought it was in the best interest of me and our family, and probably for Auburn, because I did recommend Pat Dye, who went on and had a very good, successful career at Auburn. But anyway, I'm proud that I made that decision. I'm still around after 50 years ago. 50 years ago is when I came to Georgia.
Yes.
50 years ago this year.
Absolutely. The 1964 season, and that's where I want to go back to. Now you get me back to that point. Georgia was a different Georgia than the one we see now. Much different. There have been some lean times and some difficult times, and you're 31 years old, 31 years old, a head football coach, a program like Georgia. What did you step in, and what were your thoughts stepping into that job?
Well, thank goodness that I was young and didn't know any better. And I guess that's the beauty of youth, because Georgia had gone through a tough time. Of the previous 9 seasons, there were 7 losing seasons. And even Georgia Tech, our sister rival here in Atlanta, beat Georgia 8 straight years, which was the drought. So they hired Coach Joe Leaves, the athletic director. And everybody got excited because he said he was going to do a national search. And then they got real excited when he said the new coach is Vince. A lot of them were thinking Vince Lombardi. And when they mentioned Vince Dooley, they said, "Who in the heck is Vince Dooley?" Well, here were my credentials at the time. I mean, it's amazing. I was 31 years old. I'd been the freshman coach, though I had been with the varsity at Auburn, coaching the quarterbacks. But back in those days, freshman teams were big. You played 6 games. I needed a broad experience. But I was 31, the freshman coach at a rival school. Well, as an athletic director, which I was for 25 years, there's no way I would have hired myself with those kind of credentials. But again, the beauty of youth is that I didn't know any different. Barbara didn't either. We both looked back on it now and realized we were the only 2 that thought it was a good hire. So anyway, we survived some crises, and I was able to stay around a long time.
A very long time at the University of Georgia. You come in there, and as a young coach in the Southeastern Conference, your contemporaries at that time, of course, your mentor, Chick Jordan from Auburn, Vaught at Ole Miss, and, of course, this guy named Bryant over at Alabama. What's it like to be 31 years old and walk into a room with those guys?
Well, Johnny Vaught he won 200 games, I think, at Ole Miss, one of the great coaches at Ole Miss during that period of time. Bear Bryant, most everybody knows about Bear Bryant. You mentioned Coach Jordan. Ray Graves was down at Florida, and longtime coach, and Charlie McClendon. We had a lot of them. I guess you'd say that I was a little intimidated. My buddy that time was Doug Dickey, who was a young coach also at Tennessee. So, and we didn't play each other then, so we would go to those meetings. We would sit by each other and kind of feed off each other. Then all of a sudden we started playing them, and we didn't feed off each other much after that. But nevertheless, it was quite interesting to be a young coach and to be in meetings with those people that you talked about. I mean, they're true Southern football legends.
Now, there's one other from the school over here on North Avenue. And before the people started raising eyebrows, it was Georgia Tech. Coach Dodd was someone that you admired.
Well, Coach Dodd you're right. And I tell you, as a young coach, I got my base from Coach Jordan at Auburn, my philosophy. And then it was Coach Bryant at Alabama and Coach Dodd at Georgia Tech, both highly successful, both with a little different philosophy, but nevertheless both successful. So I was able to study those 2 coaches. And the year that I came to Georgia, and the first conference meeting we had is when Georgia Tech got out of the conference. And they succeeded from the conference the very first year.
How'd you feel about that? A lot of people who weren't around that time don't know the story of how Tech left the Southeastern Conference, and you were there.
Well, Georgia Tech was highly successful during the 50s, had some great teams, national championship teams, but they felt like that they would be better served by, on a national basis, of playing Notre Dame and independent schools like that, and they felt like that there was some scholarship advantages that Alabama or LSU were having in the conference they were not having. But nevertheless, that was their decision. I don't think it was the right decision, but nevertheless, it felt like at the time it was best for Georgia Tech. And Tech became independent, didn't do as well, and then finally ended up in the ACC. But nevertheless, Coach Dodd was there the first 3 years, and we were fortunate to have done well against Georgia Tech the first 3 years, which enabled me to gain some credibility, which I needed desperately, I might add.
It's successful. He beat Georgia Tech the first 3 years there at Georgia. And that I'm sure they did get a lot of fans and a lot of Georgia supporters solidly behind him.
Well, the Georgia people were. Yeah, you're right. Not the Tech people.
Well, the Georgia people.
The Georgia people, which is more important for me at the time.
September 18th, 1965. You remember that game. You remember that date? It's a game in Athens against Alabama. And a certain play that players say is almost like a play you drew up.
Well, the history on that is that here's the way I started my career as a 31-year-old coach. We played Alabama, and they were national champions, in Tuscaloosa. Coach Bryant was the coach, and a fellow named Joe Namath was the quarterback.
Wow.
Now, that's the way I started my career. But the confidence of a 31-year-old, I thought I was going to beat them because I had personally scouted them. And we jumped on them real heavy and went off and scored a field goal and had them 3-0. We should have stopped the game, taken a picture of the score, and then came back to Athens. Because afterwards it was something like 34-3. And even that, Coach Bryant was nice to us in the fourth quarter. But the next year, Alabama went on and won the national championship that year. The next year, we opened with Alabama again, but it was here. And we were able to hang with them till late in the game. And then we had this play. We called it a flea flicker. Today's knowledge of it is a lateral and a pass.
Hook and lateral.
Hook and lateral, yeah.
Yep.
I still look at it as a flea flicker, but nevertheless a hook and lateral. And we used to play that. We used to use that play in the streets of Mobile. So we did not have a fast-scoring offense. So I said, we got to do something. If we get behind, we need to score in a hurry. So we put it in. Everybody kind of laughed at it, even the players. We never did work in practice, but it worked in that ball game. And that was the difference.
Okay, Georgia got a big win. We're going to talk about something I saw unusual after that game. We're going to continue with this. We are just getting started. We're at Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead. Stay tuned for more of this conversation with Coach Vince Dooley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Now back to Dinner with a Legend.
A conversation with Coach Vince Dooley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Back here at Shula's 347 Grill and the Buckhead Marriott, conversations with Georgia football icon Coach Vince Dooley. Sam Crenshaw with you here this evening, and it's a joy to be here with Coach Dooley. And we got one of his players who's going to come in and talk with us in just a moment, who's joined us. But, Coach, I want to go back to that day that you had the flea flicker play that Georgia beat Alabama. I watched that videotape, and I saw something that could not happen today. At the end of the game, the players carried you on your shoulders to midfield, and Coach Irk Russell was carried by some of the defensive players in midfield. And the Alabama team vacated, went straight to the locker room, and Coach Bryant walked up to you by himself. There were no state troopers. There's something that's just a fixture when we see the game at the end of the games these days, and there were none.
Well, usually Coach Bryant had a squad of troopers, as I remember.
On that video, I didn't see a single
one. But I'll
one.
say this on his behalf, that even though it was a disastrous defeat for him, that he came into the locker room and congratulated the Georgia team after that ball game, I might add.
Right.
And then he turned around, and they went undefeated again and won the national championship that year. And that was the only game that they lost that year, was that first ball game. But they went on and won the national championship 2 years in a row.
How'd that make you feel for him to come into your locker room? And
I think that's the high esteem that he's held, not only as a coach, a successful coach, but to do something, a gesture like that, is very special. So I had great admiration for him.
Tremendous. Coach Dooley, we have cards on the tables of those here in Shula's 347 Grill. Some of them have written down questions that they like to ask. We want to go for one now. Do we have one now? Go right ahead.
Coach, just wanted to know how much you've enjoyed helping the Kennesaw State start up their football program.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed it because it's gave me something to do, first of all, because I was retired. But secondly, it gave me an opportunity to see football from a entirely different perspective other than at the University of Georgia, where they've been playing football since 1892. And then you're talking about having a team at a place that never had football. So we started from scratch, and that is we had a committee that I chaired of 34 members of faculty, of students, of staff, of community leaders. And then at the end of a 9-month study, we had about a 2-inch document we gave to the president, Dr. Dan Papp, who I thoroughly enjoyed working with. And we recommended that they should move forward in having football, because when I came to Georgia 50 years ago, Kennesaw State was a junior college of about 1,200 people. Now they have just merged, and within the next year, but they're in the process of merging with Southern Poly, which is the engineering architectural school, and this will give them about 32,000 students. So it's been first of all, a commuter school. Now it's a residential school with a beautiful and wonderful dining hall and some great dormitories. So the next big step is to give it a culture, to give it a brand. And by that I mean that football can bring a brand to an institution that no other part of the institution can give. At Georgia, we're proud of red and black. We're proud of Glory, Glory to Old Georgia, and we're proud of Bulldogs. Well, they have their colors at Kennesaw State. Their mascot is the owl. So this will promote all of that and really bring a certain liveliness on the campus that no other part could bring. So you can see the excitement. And Brian Bohannon is the coach. And Brian played at Georgia, but had great experience under Coach Johnson at Georgia Tech. He's been at Georgia Southern. He's been at West Georgia and at Navy. And they've had their first recruiting class. So it's really fun to be a part of a program that's starting from scratch, which is quite a contrast from being at Georgia for 40 years as a program that had been established that I had to kind of help build and maybe further the tradition at the University of Georgia.
Thanks so much for that question. You talk about the tradition at Georgia, and of course you talk about championships. And the man sitting to your right, Jones is right now, part of your national championship team. Your place kicker, Rex Robinson, is here with us tonight. Rex, thoughts about being here with Coach Dooley and the man that you met and was your coach there, and just about heading into that season. What got you guys motivated to go in and do what you did?
Well, I came in 1977, and that was Coach Dooley's only losing season his entire career at Georgia, and so it was rather inauspicious. And the senior group that came out of that 1977 year, I think learned a lot in terms of what to do and what not to do in terms of leadership. And those 4 years were very up and down. We did very well in 1978. Had a really hard-nosed team that won a lot of close games. Could be called the Cardiac Kids. We were actually called the Wonder Dogs because there was always something wonderful happening at the end of those games. But to go from basically worst to first in those 4 years was a great experience and a true learning experience on to never give up, no matter what ups and downs you may experience in your life. but to stick with it and to continue working hard. So that was a big part of the learning experience.
Coach Dooley, that night.
Yeah, that was a great summation. The 78 team was indeed the wonder dog team. There were 5 games in which a total of 7 points separated the 5 football games, and one of them was played up in Lexington, Kentucky, when a fella kicked a field goal, and if you heard Larry Munson say, yeah, he never did say that Rex's kick was good to win the game. Yeah. But anyway, that was one of many kicks that Rex made during the course of those the 4 years that he was there. Kevin Butler is also here. Now, these two guys, in an 8-year period, made me one heck of a football coach, I'll tell you. And then we had a guy named Levitt before that, who was there for 4 years. Yeah. So we had a series of kickers, and a guy named John Casey, I might add, who kicked 2 years for me, and then kicked 2 more years, and then he'd been in pros. I don't know how many years he kicked for Charlotte. But nevertheless, kicking game is extremely important, and I was fortunate to have guys like Rex and Kevin.
And Coach Bill Hartman Sr., I think, was the person which is
sweet, Bill. What a great individual, one that had coached Charlie Trippi and Frank Sinkwich.
Wow.
Does anybody out there remember Charlie Trippi or Frank Sinkwich? A few do.
He's read about him.
Not David Green.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, is that David over there? Yeah, well,
he don't remember that.
Yeah. David.
He's a puppy.
I know that. Frank Sinkwich was a Heisman Trophy winner of the 42 team that won the national championship. And Charlie Trippi was a sophomore on that team, and he was on the undefeated 46 team. Both of them consensus All-Americans. And Trippi today may be regarded as the best all-around football player, 60-minute football player, because he was one heck of a safety man as well as a running back and a passer too. And he told me Charlie Trippi is the only living individual on that 42 team today. He's the only one living. And I interviewed him recently for a story, and he told me, he said, boy, I'd like to play in the offense, the spread offense, where the tailback can either run or throw. He said, I'd like to play in that offense today. And I think he was serious. I think he wanted to actually play now.
Well, of course, we're talking about the 1980 season with Rex being here. And, of course, things got off to a start with a player that a lot of people had heard about. And he kind of made his debut, I guess, that night up at Neyland Stadium against Tennessee. And, of course, we're talking about number 34, Herschel Walker. What are your first impressions of him, meeting this guy?
Well, he was, as a junior, you could tell he was far ahead of the game. Willie McClendon was our tailback in 78, and a heck of a good tailback. And I think Herschel was a junior then, or a sophomore. And Willie met him. And Herschel was a man as a sophomore, I might add. And I remember Willie just having big eyes looking at him. Herschel was really exceptional. I've said this about him. First of all, he had incredible speed. He had world-class speed. Secondly, great strength. And a lot of that was push-ups because they didn't have weights. But what separated him from the others is this incredible self-discipline and mental toughness. I mean, and today he probably is the best conditioned 51-year-old person in the world.
Don't doubt.
I don't think anybody's in better condition than he is, and that was typical of him. But he had to earn it. So, as you remember, we started 2 other guys that had been around a long time that deserved to start, and we were going to give Herschel a chance, which we did, and he won the starting job by halftime. And won the game.
We're just getting started. We're going to come back and talk some more about Herschel Walker and some more about the 1980 Dogs, the championship season. Rex Robinson is here. We're going to chime in some more and walk you through some of the highlights of that great season with Georgia. We're going to continue. We're here at Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead, and you're listening to Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Okay.
Vince Dooley riding on the shoulders of his Georgia football player.
5-time SEC Coach of the Year and member of the
Dinner with a Legend, a conversation with Coach Vince Dooley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back inside Shula's 347 Grill here in the Buckhead Marriott. Sam Crenshaw along with Coach Vince Dooley and Rex Robinson of the National Championship Team. Don't forget to follow us on 929thegame.com, on Twitter at 929thegame, and also go to the Facebook page for more stories about tonight's conversations with. Before we get back to the story of the National Championship season, let's go out for another question from our audience. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts and expectations of a College Football Hall of Fame coming soon to Atlanta?
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, well, everybody's excited about it, and I really think they finally found the right place because they have moved from Cincinnati to South Bend, but there are probably more college football fans with allegiances to different universities all over the country right here in Atlanta. But what I really like about it is the leadership of John Stevenson. And what I further really like about it is the fact that it has the greatest chance for sustainability. Because that's one of the problems with the Hall of Fames is that it's got to be sustained. Usually it goes 4 or 5 years as it did those other two cities. But because of the fact of its location, the geography of the location is just wonderful next to the convention center. And the fact that they will be able to book the halls for events, maybe dinners, cocktail parties, receptions, whatever it is. And I think probably now they've got 34. I've got 34 on my mind because of Herschel, and also because of 347 Shula. That's how many. He's the winningest coach. And David Green was the winningest quarterback.
Right.
For how long, David? 2 years? And somebody broke your record. But you broke Archie Manning's record. Was it Archie? No, Peyton Manning's record. And David was the winningest college quarterback in the country for a couple of years.
We were talking about the Hall of Fame. And it's kind of a case of Georgia taking something away from Notre Dame. You know all about that because that's what your team did down in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. Thoughts about Georgia making it to that game and being faced with the Notre Dame team that you had to get by and won the national championship?
Well, the Notre Dame defense was probably as good a defense in the 25 years I've coached. That was one of the top 3 or 4 defensive teams that I've seen. Their offense was good, but not like their defense. Their defense was really great. And some of you may recall that on the second play of the game, Herschel runs a sweep, and he gets hit, and he starts to the sidelines, and his elbow is sticking straight up in the air because he dislocated his shoulder. And I'm thinking to myself, here it is, the opportunity to do what we all want to do is to win them all and be the undisputed national champions. And probably your key player is out. And then I had a trainer that told me Herschel is finished. That was Warren Morris. I started to choke him and say, "You're finished, Warren." But anyway, they put the shoulder back in, and there goes Herschel. We go back on offense, back in. He ends up gaining 150 yards in that ball game. No back had ever run over 100 yards against that Notre Dame defense, and Herschel had 150 with a dislocated shoulder.
That is remarkable.
Yeah.
Rex, your recollections of that game?
Well, leading up to the game, there's a lot of pressure involved, even more so these days. But even back then, I was telling him the other day, Coach, about the Bluebonnet Bowl 2 years prior and how poorly I had kicked in the Astrodome. And
you said it, I didn't. But we all have our days, Rex.
Exactly.
I've had many of them.
And so I thought I had done a great job of putting that behind me and thinking positively. And then every reporter that I met that week, that's all he wanted to talk about was the Bluebonnet Bowl. And so I had to really focus and ended up having a good game. I wouldn't say it was a great game, but had a good game. And so when we won, it was more relief than anything for me for a few days before I could really celebrate.
Well, you kicked a field goal in the ball game.
Yep. Longest onside kick in history.
That's right. I was talking about the kickoff that went down to the 5-yard line, and the two Notre Dame guys wasn't sure who was going to get it. Neither one of them got it. We had the Kelly brothers that played for us, Bob and Steve, and they ended up getting the ball. But also in that game, we introduced Terry Hogue to the world, because Terry, we were going to redshirt him, but he kept blocking field goals in practice. And as you remember,
I was very upset during bowl practice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When he blocked another one, I said, Terry, go in, get your uniform. You're going to New Orleans with us. And I put him in. He blocked a field goal in that ball game, and then Rex kicked a field goal as a result of it.
Absolutely.
Saw some video from that game, the post game, and saw you getting a phone call from the president. And it wasn't like today. That's usually part of the broadcast when you see the coach get it. It wasn't that in that time, but you got that. And what was that like?
But he was there.
He was actually there.
President Carter was there. In fact, I think he did not win the re-election, but he had 250 staff members who were Georgia fans who wanted to go to the game. So he called up the Sugar Bowl, and at least their staff did, and said, the president wants to come, and he's got 250 staff members. Well, you can imagine the Sugar Bowl officials, with tickets being like they are. Now they got to find 250 more seats for the president and his staff. But they found him.
Fantastic. Rex, thanks so much for coming up and joining us for a little bit tonight. And thanks for sharing that with the National Championship team. We're going to continue and move forward. There was so much more even after that season. We're going to get into that and much more as we continue our conversation with Coach Vince Dooley. We're at Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead, and you're listening on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Dooley had preached to his teams from the beginning. The important thing when you have been put down is to have the resolve and courage to come back.
Now, back to Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead. This is Dinner with a Legend, a conversation with Coach Vince Dooley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into Shula's 347 Grill here at the Buckhead Marriott. Sam Crenshaw along with Coach Vince Dooley, our conversations with, and we got a question right now. Go right ahead.
Coach, who was your favorite player to coach while at University of Georgia?
Wow. No pressure.
No. That's like children. Barbara, who's your favorite child? My wife. Yep. Me. No, really, there's no way you can say a favorite, because all of them are special in their own way. Some great athletes, some great individuals, some great athletes and individuals. They're all special, and I guess one of the great rewards of coaching is that as time passes, one of your players will come back and say two very important words: "Thanks, Coach," or some that are more talkative may say, "Thanks, Coach, about teaching me how to win, how to lose, about discipline," and so forth and so on. And that's a special reward of coaching, teaching, or anybody that deals with young people and see them grow. They're all special. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that question. Okay, all right, we're getting through. And this first hour has flown by, but we got so much more territory to cover with Coach Dooley. And we got another guest here. We got one more guest from a teammate. And we're going to hear from Mrs. Dooley in the next hour.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, man. That's going to be a lot of fun when she comes up. It's going to be a lot of fun. That is all coming up when you stay tuned. We, of course, are at Shula's 347 Grill here. And some things about that is, first, an ongoing series, by the way, the conversations with at Shula's 347 Grill here in the Marriott Buckhead. And we're going to continue with those. We'll let you know as others come down the road in the future. But tonight is the night of the very first one. And the very first conversation is with the Georgia icon and coaching legend. Next hour, stay tuned for more.
A true Georgia legend, Coach Vince Dooley. And we're live with the coach at Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead, only on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back to Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead. in our conversation with the legend, Coach Vince Dooley. Hope you're enjoying it here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. And we got a question right now from our audience. Go ahead.
The BCS or the new playoff system, how about that change?
Well, I'm very much in favor of it. I think I've always advocated for at least 25 years what they ended up calling a +1. I used to call it just a national championship game after the bowl games. So I really think that they've taken another step forward. It's interesting that 25 years ago, I was on an NCAA committee to study it, and this committee recommended, there's a document in the NCAA, Sam, this 3 inches thick, that goes into detail of what this committee recommended. And you know what they recommended?
What was that?
A 14 playoff. And 25 years later, they finally got one.
Yes, and that's what's coming up. We're looking.
I think it's going to be great, yeah.
Thanks so much for the question. Okay, if you look on the stage, we've been joined by another one of Coach Dooley's great players, the man who took over kicking chores after Rex Robinson departed, Kevin Butler. Thanks so much for coming in.
It's an honor to be here, to honor this man right here, Kevin, and his wife.
Kevin, you come in on the heels of the national championship team, but Georgia became a juggernaut, not just in the SEC, but nationally in the following 2 seasons. What was it like to be a part of this team?
Well, the first thing I selfishly, I was trying to replace Rex Robinson's shoes, and I knew exactly what I was stepping into as a kicker coming to Georgia. You know, we talked about Alan Levitt. We talked about Rex Robinson, All-Americans. I had one thing to do, and that was try to fill this guy's shoes and hold up that, because as you heard Coach Dooley speak earlier of his early days against Alabama, Georgia was a defense and kicking game, and that's the one thing that I was blessed with being able to play for Coach Dooley, is he did concentrate on the kicking game more than anybody that I knew of at that time. And certainly as I look back now, I know how much Coach Dooley put emphasis on the kicking game, and I know how much of a difference it does make, and it makes the difference between winning and losing championships. So that was my main focus, coming in and trying to just keep that standard that Rex and Allen and the previous kickers had at Georgia, and that was my biggest challenge.
That was it. We thought of this guy and what he was able to do for you coming in at University of Georgia.
Well, there's, as Kevin has mentioned, the previous 2 kickers were All-Americans.
Yeah.
But this guy took an even step further, because not only was he an All-American, he's the only field goal extra point kicker that's in the College Football Hall of Fame. So that's and that's something that was the only thing that could separate him. But he was inspired by a cheerleader at the time.
Still am.
Kathy. Still inspired, who is here tonight. But I never saw Kevin as long as we had the ball on our side of the 50, because he was looking across the field at the cheerleaders. And as soon as we would cross the 50, all of a sudden he'd show up in front of me, because he was getting ready. He wants to start kick. He'd be walking up and down in front of me, and I'd say, Kevin, we're trying to score a touchdown. Will you get out of the way? But he was ready. And then as soon as whatever we did, he kicked a field goal. Then he'd go back looking across the field. And when he kicked that 160 yards against Clemson in that ball game to win that game, he started running. You know where he ran? To the side of the cheerleaders. And looking at Kathy, I don't blame him.
Don't blame him at all. Don't blame him at all. Don't blame him at all. I'm going to throw out a date for both of you. November 13th, 1982. Jordan-Hare Stadium. The one and only time that Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson were on the field together, and Georgia comes out with a win in that game. I know, Coach, 100,000 people have told you they were there. Most of them aren't telling the truth, but I was there. I was there.
So a heck of a game.
Okay. Thoughts about that game on your way to another Sugar Bowl trip, but thoughts about what it meant to be on the field and see those athletes perform that game.
Well, it's when you look back on it, it's kind of like thoroughbred races. Sometimes they come in bunches. And in the 70s, we had about 3 or 4 Triple Crown winners. And we have not had a Triple Crown winner since Affirmed won. And I might add, Affirmed was owned by a Georgia football player. Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, now they still haven't had a Triple Crown winner. But here it is, two of the greatest running backs ever in college football at the same time. And both of them are just absolutely incredible. And to see them compete in that one game was something to behold. And we were very fortunate to come out on top, which was, I think, our third SEC championship, wasn't it? Because we had won 3 in a row. And so it was a heck of a football game.
Kevin, your memories from that game?
Yeah, what I remember about it is it was a intense game down there at Jordan-Hare. It was as loud as I can remember it ever being down there. Go down there twice. I've been back there many times, and that day just burned something in my memory because you're on a field very few times in a career with so many good players on both sides. And that's really where we found ourselves that day. Here you talk about Coach Dooley. You mentioned Pat Dye earlier. Here you have an Auburn guy coaching Georgia, a Georgia guy coaching Auburn. You got Bo Jackson, you got Herschel Walker. I mean, you could not paint a better situation than this game, and it was really a dogfight. And I think I'm thinking back 1914. I think was the score, and we just pounded it out. And sugar was falling from the sky at the end of the game by God bless his soul, Larry Munson. And it was just something that I will never forget, and I was blessed to be a part of it. And it was a dogfight, no doubt.
If you remember that Auburn had this little running back from down in Albany. It went about 70 or 80 yards on us. Lionel Train James.
Yeah.
He went about a beautiful run. So we were down, and we had to come back, and that's where Herschel, he must have carried the ball 10 times on that drive to finally go back ahead. And then Auburn was coming back down the field. And finally on the last play of the game, he threw it up, and we were able to
knock it down,
and sugar started falling from the sky.
It was a wonderful day, I can tell you that much.
Fantastic. We think about you a lot, Kevin, and the Clemson game, and that's a series progress. The conferences expand, and so a game like that goes away. Of course, Clemson and Georgia are back last year and this year. But thoughts about it and the characters that were there. You had Danny Ford, you had Coach Dooley, and Refrigerator Perry. It was each and every year that was a remarkable rivalry. And you put your signature on it, obviously.
Well, I was very blessed with being in that position to do that. We had a team that had a lot of fight that year. We certainly were not, and Coach will tell you, we weren't as talented as that team that came from Clemson. They were ranked number 2 in the AP when they came into Georgia. We had a great season the year before, and we'd lost a lot, and we were kind of retooling, and that's what Georgia did. But Clemson came in there, and they were beating us around that first half, and Coach Dooley had a very good animated halftime speech and got us focused back out there, and we got back out there, and as a kicker, all you want to do, and Rex will tell you, all we dream about at night is to be able to come in and do what the team needs you to do. It's not to be a hero, it's not to be the main man, it's to come in and back your players up from all the fight that they put in, and we worked ourselves into a position to try a 60-yarder that day, and I know my team had confidence in me. My coach had confidence in me. I had confidence. But it was really to get to that point. That was the challenge of that game. It really wasn't the kick. It was getting from our 20-yard line up there, having Herman Archie make plays, Todd Williams make plays, the offensive line keep that whole thing. And that's really where team sport comes into it. And that's what I remember most about it, being able to close it out for my teammates.
That's about what Coach has done since Georgia. Are you amazed at the things that he's done, not just as athletic director, but the many different things?
Absolutely. You know what? I'm so proud to have Coach Dooley as a coach and a mentor. I find myself, and I'm lucky enough to have a son that's playing professional football, and even as of today, talking to him and giving him advice and encouragement, it comes from one man, and it really does, and I really mean this. It's from what Coach Dooley taught me as a freshman through my senior year and beyond that you just have to believe in yourself, you believe in your teammates, and you believe in what you're doing and your ability. And, it's tough. Challenges are tough every day, but when you have somebody that you look up to, like I did to Coach Dooley, and our team did, you believe it and you work it, and then you pass it on, and that's what I do, and that's probably the biggest blessing that I have. And I know Coach hears it a lot, but when you can pass it on to your son or your daughter about things that your coach has taught you, that's invaluable. It really is. It's a life lesson.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin, and I'm glad my wife is here listening. Right.
Well, wait till she gets up here. I got a whole other speech for her.
Coach Dooley, because in addition to the magnificent things with football, and we don't want to stray too far from that, but just as an athletic director too, because so many of the things that you saw, I don't know if it was your vision or your foresight to see things that now we see with the Georgia Athletic Program, even the women's sports, just a total program at University.
Well, I'm very proud of our total athletic program, and even when I was coaching, I was thought that one day when the opportunity came that I had some ideas just being there as long as I was, that we could really expand and have a broad program, particularly at the time that women's sports was coming in. And we had the Title IX challenges. But I do feel like that we got a jump on a lot of schools with that, because even before it was interpreted as to what Title IX really meant, we took the philosophy that for any sport, men's sport that we had, that a comparable women's sport should get the same scholarships, should get the same facilities, should get the same coaching opportunities and everything else. And because of that, our women's sports early on jumped ahead of a lot of people in the country and still has maintained that position even today.
Fantastic. That's another part of Coach's legacy that I think that leads not only the example for the rest of the country that people have followed, Kevin.
Absolutely. I mean, Coach Dooley took this university and grew the athletic department leaps and bounds. I mean, that was the time, 80s to 90s to the 2000s. You saw that growth in all of our athletic competition, and you brought the Title IX into it. I mean, 3 days ago, our softball team won the SEC championship, the girls softball, and they're there. Tennis, baseball, equestrian now. You look at all the things outside of those core three.
The women won the national championship this year, and the equestrian team also won the national championship.
I mean, you've got all kind of great things happening at Georgia, and sometimes at some universities they get hid behind the three big ones, basketball, football, and baseball. But at Georgia, we try to rise it all to the top and recognize everybody and give everybody the same chance. And really, Coach Dooley blazed that trail for us.
Absolutely. Tremendous job. Kevin, thanks for coming up and sharing some with us tonight on our show. And we're going to continue with more. We are at Shula's 347 Grill here in Buckhead. And we're talking with a legend, Coach Vince Dooley, on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
How about them dogs? A man with endless stories, and we're talking to him live right now.
This is Dinner with a Legend, a conversation with Coach Vince Dooley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back to Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead as we continue our conversation with the icon, the legend, the Hall of Famer, Georgia football coach Vince Dooley. Coach, a lot of people have been asking you questions tonight about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But you want to try to turn the tables around.
I want to ask David Green a question.
Ooh.
David, tonight, Steve over here brought me Veron Haynes' shoes that he was wearing when he caught the touchdown pass against Tennessee, and that classic. You got it, don't you, Steve?
Wow, the actual article.
Look at him. Look at those.
Whoa. Look at this.
Yeah, go show David that.
Wow.
Those are the shoes that Veron was wearing when he caught that pass.
All right.
These are the hobnail boots right here that he stepped on their face. And
so David, I want you to talk about that play, if you will. I've got it as in my playbook, 34 of Georgia's most memorable plays, and that's one of them.
Well, there's no question. It definitely was. I tell you what, that game in Neyland Stadium, just thinking back, Tennessee was 4 in the country, and I think we were 13 or 14. Nobody thought we had a chance to win. It was actually my first road game ever as a player, and I remember walking up to the line of scrimmage the first time, and you see Big John Hainsworth, or you see Albert Hainsworth and the other big boy. Both of them were 6'8", 6'9". I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I never forget a TV timeout. Actually, John Stinchcomb, my right tackle, he was kind of messing with me. He goes, "Hey, Green, look how big those guys are over there." I said, "Yeah. Why don't you keep them off of me?" But I tell you what happened. The Hobnail boot should have never happened. All we had to do was just run the ball 3 times, get a first down, and the game would have been over. But we didn't do it. We didn't take care of business. We had to punt. And then sure enough, they hit that screen pass that went about 75 yards and with less than a minute on the clock. And you talk about heartbreaking. And it was the only time really my whole career of playing football that I ever truly felt the ground shake. The ground was shaking in Neyland Stadium. It was that loud. But some just told me, I was actually throwing over there on the sidelines the whole time because something just told me mentally I couldn't check out of the game yet. It wasn't like the game is in the defense's hands and you can check out. I was still focused, still in the game. And so sure enough, when we got the ball back, they did a little squib kick. We get the ball on the 40-yard line. First play, coach calls freedom top, which is nothing more than a little dump pass to Damian Gary, just 5 yards, a little easy pass. They were playing prevent defense. Damian catch it, wiggles, gets about 10 yards. We're already past the 50-yard line at the first play. We get fortunate enough. Randy McMichael makes a couple of unbelievable catches. Next thing you know, we're on a 10-yard line or 5-yard line. Coach calls a timeout. He comes over. He says, "Green, we're going to do this. We're going to call pass 44 Haynes. If it's quarters coverage, he'll be wide open. If it's one safety, just throw it out of the end zone. We'll live to see another down." So sure enough, I get up to the line of scrimmage, and I feel like a golfer when you're standing over like a 2-foot putt because it was quarters coverage. And I knew before I took the snap that he was going to be wide open. And sometimes that's worse. You would almost not want to know. And so as I'm saying set hut, I'm sitting here going, just make the pass. And so sure enough, take the snap, and sure enough, Veron's just wide open. But it's amazing. I never would have known, especially at that age, I was 19 years old, that to be a part of a play that now that I can sit in the stands with my kids and see that up on a jumbo screen, watching the game. It was an unbelievable play, but obviously without Larry Munson, his call, it would have never been legendary quite like it was. But it was a special moment for sure.
Hobnail boot. All right.
Thanks a lot, David. And by the way, you can hear David here from Shula's 347 Grill each and every Thursday from 6 until 8. He is here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Now, Coach, this charming lady beside you here is showing us a round of applause first of all for Barbara Dooley.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna say goodbye.
No. You can't get away now.
I usually can't get a word in. I have to get them in early before. Barbara, I love you. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, right.
We're all glad that you're here.
Thank you.
Yes.
The fun's getting ready to start.
I believe it. I can believe it. All the time when they're in Athens, still in the same house. You never wanted to move.
Hell yeah, I wanted to move. I begged him to move.
Yeah?
Yeah, and so finally, after 11 editions, it never got right. And I said, we've got to move. And he looked at me one day and he said, let me tell you one thing. We are not moving. You can do whatever you want to this house, but we're not moving. I said, great. So I called a bulldozer and an architect. And we plowed the whole thing down. And I've got a great new house on the same property.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a bad mistake to say. I didn't want to leave my garden. I got a nice garden. I mean, I've worked 20 years. I mean, it's really a beautiful garden. In fact, I had the last 3 days, I've had tours in my garden the last 3 days.
And talk about his gardening, because there is a breed, I believe, of a flower that is named for you.
2 of them. 3 of them. A hydrangea, a rose.
No, Barbara.
A camellia.
That's right.
And a stinkweed. What? I don't know.
Native azalea.
Oh, a native azalea.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Look, I am in charge. She's in charge of domestic affairs, everything in the house. Outside the house, I'm in charge of foreign affairs. So we separate.
We do separate, yeah.
Talk about being the support person for someone, because he obviously doesn't get to do the things that he's had a chance to do without tremendous support at home, and thoughts about the role that you've had to play, because you had to share him with everybody.
I still am. Yeah. You know, I really have decided he doesn't like me because he keeps getting new things to get involved in. But I will have to say, being a coach's wife, they have to be focused. Back in the old days, I think the new breed of coaches do more family things, but in the era that we were in, coaches focused on coaching. And I had to take up all the slack, which I thought was the thing that every wife did. You know, you raised your children, you repaired everything in the house, you did everything that needed to be doing so he could go to work every day. And his work would start at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he might get home by 11 at night. So I had a wardrobe of bathrobes and pajamas because he never saw me dressed for 30 years. He'd leave, I'd be in the bed. He'd come in and I'd be in the bed. Or if I waited up on him, you know, I was in my pajamas. So coaches' wives were a tough breed when I was growing up in it.
Yeah.
But I think it's gotten a little better with the rules now, hadn't it, because of recruiting?
Well, yeah, back in those days, actually, you could recruit all year round. And even when we were on vacation, I would get a guilty conscience because I felt like somebody was out there talking to a recruit, and I'd have to take 2 or 3 days off from our vacation. Then I'd go see about 5 or 6 recruits. I'd feel good, and I'd come back. But now we've got some reasonable recruiting rules as to visitation, which is better for the family. I mean, there's no question. It was tough on families back in those days, really tough.
Well, I'll tell you, we've waited in many a car coming home from vacation, 4 kids, 2 dogs, and all the suitcases in a town while he ran in to tell everybody hello.
Yeah.
We're going, oh, my gosh.
That's your lifeblood, though.
That was well, when I complained many years early on, I was very young, and this was not my idea of a marriage. You know, I was like raised with Ozzie and Harriet on TV, and this just wasn't what I really thought marriage was going to be. And so I had complained and I had cried. He was never home. I had 3 babies under 3, and I was doing everything. And so one Sunday after church, he drove us through the slums. And he said, okay, I can stay home with you and we can live here, or I can go to work. And I said, get to work, buddy. I never said anything else.
Talk about being with it, because, you know, during the latter part of his coaching career, George, there was some health issues. I think that was that artery. I think you even call it a bulldog artery. And he was very emotional on the sideline. I remember sometimes the camera would focus on him. You'd be over there on one leg.
He danced.
Yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts, though, with him? Because he wanted to be it, and I know he wanted to continue to coach. And what was that like for you, and you're still supporting him?
Well, I didn't want him to quit coaching when he quit. He said, what do you want to do, kill me on the sidelines? I said, we could prop you up for a couple of months. Nobody would know.
Well, that was when, all of a sudden, I had worked 25 years and finally got up to where we were making
a little money. And he quit. He couldn't stand it.
Well, because it wasn't all about money. But that was before I guess that everything, because I was both athletic director and football coach, and so including everything, I was making $500,000 a year.
It's the most he ever
after
made.
25 years. Our son made more money in coaching in 3 years than I made in 25. That's the difference of the salary of today. My first salary, and I've still got the contract, 1 page, 3 paragraph, base salary $12,000, 2,500 subsistence, $1,000 TV, $15,500.
That was his first salary.
Really?
And we thought we were rich.
Yeah. And
oh, yeah, we did.
But somebody said that's just about what you were worth when you came. And it probably was. Anyway.
You think about that now because you talk about the deals and the contracts that the coaches have now. It's so lucrative.
3, 4, 5 million.
But the pressure too, and what their wives, I guess, have to deal with now.
Yeah, it's a different game today. Nobody puts up with you today. The name of the game is we're paying you big bucks and you better win right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, the name of the game was paying we little bucks and you still better win. Don't forget that.
But you won.
Yeah,
so that was the good news.
Obviously, this couple has done so much together and they're continuing to do things. We're going to have more with Vince and Barbara Dooley. It gets better, folks. Stay with us. You there at home, stay with us too. We're at Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead, and you're listening on Sports Radio 92.9 again.
Now, back to the man who brought a college football national championship to UGA. This is Dinner with a Legend.
A conversation with Coach Vince Dooley.
On Sports Radio 92.9, The Game.
Back inside Shula's 347 Grill here at the Buckhead Marriott. Sam Crenshaw along with Vince and Barbara Dooley as we continue our conversation, which really got lively in the last segment as Mrs. Dooley arrived. I tell you what, the support of a wife is very important, and we have another wife who's been very supportive of one of your former players we heard from earlier, Kevin Butler. Kathy Butler, you want to ask a question?
I do. Hey, Coach. Hi, Barbara.
Hello, Kathy.
I have a question which I think is really appropriate for the both of you to answer, and it's actually multifaceted. So, number one, I want to ask, what do you think the difference is nowadays in discipline for athletes? And do you think that there's an impact, obviously, with cell phones and social media? Does that make a difference in discipline? And what is the difference now? Because back in the day, we had McWhorter Hall, and now there's no such thing as an athletic dorm. So how does all that play into how athletes are nowadays disciplined? And Barbara, how is your darling son Derek doing?
Okay, that's 30 minutes.
talking about him. Thanks a lot, Kathy.
Baby Jesus is doing great. He is in Dallas, Texas with the Dallas Cowboys. He's coaching the wide receivers. And his wife is from Fort Worth, so she is in ecstasy. And the word is, when mama's happy, everybody's happy.
That's what they say.
So, he's doing great. Thank you for asking, Kathy.
She asked a question about social media. I mean, the cell phones, even this thing like I have right here. The players have them. They're able to express themselves. There's some of the coaches, though, who reel them in on those type things. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, even before cell phones, players sometimes would express themselves. It wasn't as instant as it is today. Yeah. But all of a sudden, I might read in the paper the next day what one of them said.
About you?
No, about an opponent. For instance, we had just won the championship in '76 and beaten Auburn, and so the Tech was the last game, and it was kind of a downer because Tech was not having a good year, and we just won the Southeastern Conference, and Coach Goff, who was a quarterback at the time, said that the Tech game was not that important anymore. Now, you can imagine that being in the headlines that became on the bulletin board of Georgia Tech. So Ray and I had a little conversation afterwards. And then, incidentally, we had to kick a field goal. Levitt, one of those four-year kickers, All-American kickers, kicked a field goal with 10 seconds left to beat Tech that day. That's how tight it was. But nevertheless, It's some challenges. It really is, and I think you're constantly trying to talk to your players about these things because it's a learning. So much of it is a learning experience for them. They think that only themselves and whoever they're talking to knows what they're saying. They don't know how fast it is around the world. So I can imagine it's a challenge. And I'm glad I don't have to deal with it. Coach Rick can deal with it.
So we'll talk about him because one thing Kathy mentioned was discipline. And some people, say that maybe Coach Rick doesn't do all the things that he could or should do. I talked with one of your players who is here tonight who mentioned he had to come to your office once, and that was a very unpleasant experience. So talk about those type things that you deal with to make sure things don't happen like that way again.
Well, Coach Rick, I think the record speaks for himself as far as what he's done in his discipline. You're going to always get questioned if you're the head football coach, whatever you do. But the fact remains, his record is among the top 4 or 5 in the country, 3 or 4. And besides that, how could you find a better representative of the University of Georgia than Coach Mark Rick as a person? So he's got the best of both worlds, or we have the best of both worlds in him. But it's changed. It is changed, and discipline is different. I did come out of the Marine Corps, so I was a little bit more gung-ho, follow me type disciplinarian. We even had that with our children. Barbara and I, we agreed on a couple of things. One was discipline, and we never questioned each other if one would administer discipline to the children.
Okay.
But I used to catch hell in the bed later at night, about something I might have done to Derek, precious Jesus, or whatever she calls him.
You weren't that bad, were you?
We were both pretty tough. Okay. We were, but we didn't question each other in front of them. Right. But, boy, I could get him in a car, and I'd just let him know what I thought. When a man's driving a car, you can get away with murder.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can. And so you do. You pick and choose your fights, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I'd get him behind the wheel, and I'd go at him. That's for sure.
Wow.
I'll have to tell you.
Okay.
One day I was driving him, and I did not want to drive him. But when he looks at you and says, you're going to do it, you're going to do it. I mean, I know what his players went through when he glares at you and says, you're going to do it. So I got in the car, and I drove him to Atlanta. And that means when you drive him, you don't turn on the radio and you don't talk. You just drive. And I drove him to Atlanta, and all the way to Atlanta, I was thinking how much I really didn't like him at that point. And so on our way home, he had done what he had to do in Atlanta, and on our way home, I was hitting Monroe, and I couldn't wait to get home, and I just stepped on the gas. And I was doing 80 in a 55-mile zone, and he said to me, he lowered his glasses, which really means I'm really aggravated with you, and he said, you better slow down.
Just like that.
You better slow down. You're going to get a ticket. Well, when he said that, I just stomped it harder. And so the blue light came on. And so the police pulls me over, and he looks at my license, and he said, Mrs. Dooley, wow, you're going 90 miles an hour. Why are you in such a hurry to get home? I said, have you ever been in a car with an SOB and you couldn't get out? No, first Vince said, give her a big ticket. He said, give her the biggest ticket you can. And he said to me, why were you going so fast? I said, have you ever been? He said, you just go right on. He didn't give me a ticket. He said, you just go right on. So he put his glasses back on and didn't say another word.
Just enjoyed the ride.
Yeah.
Just enjoyed the ride.
But you've gotten a few in your days.
I have gotten about one in every county. I'm running a record.
Yeah. She's been to driving school. She needs to go back, really.
I had to go to driving school or go to jail.
No.
But it was great. I was in driving school with all the kids that got DUIs. We had a ball.
Coach.
That's what I say. I think that this program is getting ready to come to an end.
The things we didn't know. Oh, my goodness.
That's what he lives with.
Yep. Yep. And does it very, very well.
He does, doesn't he?
I do it very, very well. You're right.
Remarkable stories. We're going to come back. We got a little bit of one more little bitty segment. We're going to. This has been time.
Is she going to be back?
No, I'm leaving you.
No, you can't leave now. She may go get in the car and drive.
Yeah.
She may go get in the car and drive. We don't want to do that quite yet. Well, we're going to come back with more. One more segment. This has been quite an evening. We still have a little bit more to go. You stay tuned. We are going to come back with more here in 347 Grill, Shula's 347 Grill in Buckhead, as we're Conversations with Coach Vince Dooley continues here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
A special dinner and conversation with a Georgia sports icon. And it's all live right now. Coach Vince Dooley is on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back once more into Shula's 347 Grill here in Buckhead. Our conversation with Coach Dooley and his wife, Barbara Dooley. Don't forget, here at Shula's 347 Grill, each and every Thursday from 4 to 6, David Green and Mark Owens are here talking college football, talking Georgia football, and David's here in the house. It happens here each and every week from 4 until 6. You can stop by on your way home from work. Instead of sitting in traffic, come in and hang out with him. That'd be a nice thing to do. We have enjoyed this time. These 2 hours have flown by, but I hope that you've been entertained by it, that you've enjoyed this evening, and you found out some things maybe you didn't know, or we refreshed your memories on some things with Coach Dooley. And Coach, we appreciate you and your lovely wife being here with us this evening.
Well, it's been a great group, and another one of my players out there, Demetrius Douglas, who is a representative, and I'm very proud of him. He was on one of my last team.
On the last team?
Yeah. And
he's from Henry County. He's representing Henry County, right?
Yeah. Quickly, Demetrius, what was Coach like the last season? What was it like the last season?
Well, we really didn't think he was going to leave because they said it every year for a couple of years that he was going to leave. But he was a little laid back.
Okay.
A little laid back until the tight games, and then he got kind of crunk up. But as a whole, he was, he really was a great mentor to all of us. Showed us the way, and I feel really enlightened in saying that, he made me a promise when I first came to the university that, I don't care how long it takes, I'm going to make sure you get your degree.
Yeah.
And he stood to his word.
That's it.
And I'm always grateful for that, Coach Lee.
Wait a minute now. I guaranteed him I'd give him the opportunity to get his degree. You had to get your degree yourself, and you kept on and got it. So I'm proud of you for doing that.
What a tremendous note to end on. Thanks so much, Demetrius, for sharing that story with us. Thank you so much for being here with us at Shula's 347 Grill for our first installment of Conversations with. Stay tuned for which the next one will be. We hope you'll come back and join us. But tonight has been the night for Coach Vince Dooley. Thank you so much for joining us, Coach Dooley.
Is it over?
Yeah, that's all we're going to do.
There's another one, Steve Holman back there, the voice of the Hawks.
I know, you used to work with him.
He and I used to be on Monday and Friday every time for about 5 years, and his son, a Georgia graduate, is back there.
I see you, voice of the Hawks back there, Steve. Thanks for stopping through tonight. Thank you all for being here with us. This has been a time well spent. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Hope you enjoyed the meal, the adult beverages, and the time with Coach and Barbara Dooley. And she's not going to drive you home, in case you're wondering.
Not me. We're going to stay here tonight, I'll tell you that.
Thanks so much for joining us.
All
Rob
right.
Tribble is next. You stay tuned on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
listening to a Sports Radio 92.9 The Game exclusive. Dinner with a Legend. A conversation with Vince Dooley. Big thanks to Shula's 347 Grill and Buckhead for providing an amazing space and delicious food and drinks. Thanks to 11 Alive Sam Crenshaw for hosting. And most of all, thanks to Vince and Barbara Dooley for giving their time and making this a very special event. We are Atlanta's sports station. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Get in the game. On Twitter at 929 The Game.
On Facebook /929 The Game.
On YouTube /929 The Game.
On your phone, the free Audio Roadshow app.
The website 929thegame.com.
Watch the game. Watch 929thegame.com.
And listen at 929thegame.com.
Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.